It's said that everyone has a mountain to climb, a cross to bear. But what if you couldn't climb? Carrying a cross, you can't even lift a feather. Your ability to tell someone you can't do it is gone, and the breath to even start the journey is fading. This is the world for a person with ALS. ALS, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, is most notably known as Lou Gehrig's disease. 30,000 Americans are living with the disease right now, and every 90 minutes, someone is diagnosed and someone else passes away from ALS.
He was one of the most caring, loving people I've ever known. He loved his kids and me as much as anybody could.
My dad was, well, a very private person, actually, and he just showed his love in just the most kind, little random acts, not these huge grand things, just everyday little things, and he was just really special.
After Jimmy McDonald had a bad fall at his home in 2001, he and his wife Bonnie knew something was wrong. After several doctor's appointments and ruling out a brain tumor, Jimmy learned he had ALS.
We drove home almost in silence, and it took us 2 weeks to tell anyone because we had to deal with it before we could help them.
Jimmy was more concerned about the news hurting his family, especially his 2 daughters.
I tried to minimize it at first, but quickly after getting on the internet and reading a little bit about it, realized that it was going to be a long, hard battle.
After facing the reality, they decided to embrace it and move forward.
We tried to do things that he wanted to do that he hadn't gotten to do. We went to California. We went on a cruise to Alaska because, as a joke, when the kids were growing up, he would say when he retired he's going to ride a motorcycle to Alaska.
The disease started in his foot, eventually binding him to a wheelchair, and then after 2 years and 7 months from his diagnosis, Jimmy lost his battle with ALS.
He never complained. He wasn't that type of person. He handled ALS with the most grace and dignity.
Steve was just an amazing man. I met him in high school, and he was always very creative, funny, and he went to Auburn to become an engineer, which just suited him perfectly.
After choking on his coffee at work, Steve Pesto began researching his symptoms and self-diagnosed his condition as being ALS. After an MRI confirmed it, Steve, at 39 years old, was looking at 2 to 5 years left to live.
You've got 3 young children and you think, this just can't be, So it was very shocking. It was heartbreaking. And I don't know, don't wish it on anyone.
Steve had bulbar onset, which is a condition of ALS that robs you of your ability to speak first. Janine and her 3 young daughters became his full-time caregivers and embraced the time they had left.
He had told lots of crazy jokes, had crazy songs that he would play, and there was nothing more contagious than to see Steve laughing. We got through things through laughter and humor with the girls.
We would have to take hugs from him instead of him giving us hugs, but that's what it was, He was still Dad.
I've learned that everybody has their cross to carry. So unfortunately, that was his, but boy, did he carry it well.
Kathy was what you would call a Southern lady, a steel magnolia.
Kathy was a year older than I was, so she wasn't just my sister, she was like my best friend.
Chatty Kathy is what people called her. She loved to talk. She loved genealogy. I don't think she met anybody she wouldn't talk to.
At 50 years old, Kathy Klein was diagnosed with ALS. She was basically told, go home and die. There's no cure. Even worse, Kathy's precious voice was taken first.
I think that was the single hardest thing for her, was losing the speech. She had the bulbar onset, which to me was so cruel. Why did it take that first?
Kathy stayed positive though, and her family says she never asked why or became ill. She used a dry erase board up until 6 months before she passed away to communicate. They also used laughter to ease the pain.
She had this lift, a chair lift, and I got her halfway in it and she kind of fell, but it was onto the bed, and I mean, we just both started laughing. It was just, it was one of those things where you have to laugh to keep from crying.
Kathy passed away just 3.5 years after her diagnosis.
Even in high school, on class favorites, he was voted the class clown. In the support group, they soon dubbed him the clown of the group as well. Up until the last hour he was living, he was telling jokes.
After getting married in their teens, Aubrey Jr. Winkles and his wife Kathy were inseparable. Kathy even quit her office job to join Jr. on the road as a trucker. But in 2000, when Jr. fell at a truck stop in Oregon, they began to wonder what was wrong. It took 1.5 years before they discovered Jr. had ALS. Kathy went back on the road alone to help pay the mounting medical bills.
I tried to keep a smile on because, he was upbeat. I didn't want him to know how it was wearing me down. I would save my tears till I was in the shower.
ALS took Jr. fast. He passed away 1 year and 4 months after his diagnosis.
He chose to live with it. He chose not to die with it.
So Darren was an engineer. He and I got married and started working for the Army. And he was athletic. He was a good runner.
Running, swimming, cycling, even completing triathlons, Darren Cruz loved moving and was physically fit. So when he started having trouble opening a Coke bottle one day, it was a troubling sign. It was shortly after that Darren discovered he had ALS. The disease started in his limbs, quickly binding him to a wheelchair.
I think ALS is pretty gruesome. I think it's about the worst one that I know of. Takes all your voluntary muscles and it leaves your brain fine, at least in his case, and in most cases it does. And so you're kind of buried alive.
And it was sad to see my dad going through that, because I remember there were times where he would we'd be riding in the car and he'd see people riding their bikes, and I could just tell the look on his face, and he would be he wishes he could be out there and he couldn't. I just hated to see him go through that.
Darren passed away 3 years after his diagnosis.
Eric was our firstborn child, loved math and science and loved playing with computers from earliest days. And his dream was to go off to Georgia Tech and study computer science.
He was very smart, liked to do independent activities like biking and hiking and float trip type of canoeing. He had a lot of good sense of humor.
The average age someone is diagnosed with ALS is 55. So when Eric Oberman, at the age of 18, began having signs of ALS, it took 2 years to get a diagnosis.
But he never really said, why me? It was, it was about why this disease, why does it exist, more than him having a pity party for himself.
After 2 years of living his dream of studying computer science at Georgia Tech, Eric's loss of his voice and deteriorating health forced him back home. His family rallied to pack in as much living as they could. Eric devoted the rest of his life becoming an advocate for ALS. In 2005, Eric spoke before a Senate subcommittee hearing in Washington, D.C. to tell his story using his speech-generating computer. Eric Oberman passed away at the age of 28.
When you get a diagnosis like this in someone so young, especially as parents, you're always thinking the future that you thought you had when that child was born. It's a sad event to see that candle blown out.
After Jimmy McDonald was diagnosed, he and his wife Bonnie started going to support group meetings in Birmingham. They found the group ill-fit for their needs and decided to form a support group in Huntsville. That idea was the seed that later grew into the chapter for the ALS Association in Alabama. These 6 individuals and their caregivers worked to make that official in 2004.
When we started out, we had to learn everything the hard way. We didn't know anything.
We felt like we had nothing except just ourselves and, of course, our brains, you know, to put ideas on the table. A small group of people thinking, you know, to the future, what can we offer? What can we do for the further generations? How can we offer respite care? How can we offer financial assistance?
Each patient said they wanted to dedicate the rest of the time they had devoted to fighting ALS. Steve Pesto rallied everyone to use the meetings as a way to document tips and tricks on how to deal with the illness. He even designed a lift and gave the design away for free. He instituted the motto, "Keep up the fight." Eric Oberman became the face of ALS by traveling to Washington, D.C. to petition for more research money and for a national registry for ALS. Other families worked to set up fundraisers and build awareness. A loan closet was started where patients could borrow equipment other patients had phased out of, saving thousands of dollars. It was a true support system.
Having at least just even one person that, you know, could share their information, let alone 2, 3. So huge difference. Not to mention for the caregivers to have, you know, somebody else that kind of understood what you're going through.
We were closer to them than our own family because we shared so much in common. I said Junior would absolutely get up off his deathbed to come to that support group meeting. You know, it meant that much to him.
That was 10 years ago.
But in that period of time, we've grown from being just a standalone support group serving patients in Huntsville, Madison County, and a few counties outside of there, to being statewide, and we serve over 200 patients every year.
They've also set up a National Certified Treatment Center of Excellence at Crestwood Medical Center in Huntsville. They serve patients from Meridianville to Mobile. Groups across the state have raised millions for research. But there's more to do.
I think what is so disappointing to me is when Lou Gehrig had this disease, even on the red carpet, Elizabeth Taylor made the comment, "We will cure this in the next few years." And here we are today, and we still don't have anything.
With ALS, they suffer the fact that there's not survivors, and they don't have the advocates.
This disease has to be cured. It's not a disease that anyone should have to ever, no one should ever have to go through that.
You just have to know what it is, raise the awareness of it, and then you can get somewhere.
The good news is we're serving so many more families. Bad news is they're still dying.
So, what can you do? Support an ALS walk? Give money? Or maybe find a cure? So let's
keep up the fight.
Keep up the fight.
Just keep up the fight.
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 And let's create a world without ALS.